Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping have just met. Now, this is their first structured meeting in 5 years. The last time they met bilaterally was at the second informal summit in Mahabalipuram between the 11th and 12th of October 2019. Now, just 6 months after their meeting in 2019, in April 2020, China unilaterally attempted to alter the line of actual control by violating all the border agreements it had drawn up with India and pushing its soldiers along the line of actual control. This led to standoffs, violence. Bullets were fired on the LAC for the first time in almost 4 decades. Now, over the last 4.5 years, India has held fast to its position that there could be no high-level contact with China unless the situation along the LAC was restored to what it was pre-May 2020. Well, that seems to have happened now. Chinese soldiers have disengaged from the 2 flashpoints along the LAC, Depsang and Demchok. As we discussed on the News9 Plus show yesterday, this is the first of 3 steps along the LAC, the 3 Ds that we mentioned: disengagement, de-escalation, and finally, demilitarization. Now, disengagement is complete. De-escalation and demilitarization is some distance away. Both armies will resume border patrolling to their perceived claim lines as they have in the past. The questions we are asking is, today, how do we ensure that such clashes that might arise out of these border patrols meeting on the LAC, how do we ensure that these clashes don't spiral out of control and turn into border conflicts? What are the steps that India and China must take next to ensure de-escalation and demilitarization? And finally, the border dispute is the biggest hurdle in the normalization of ties between India and China. What can both countries do to begin to take the first steps to settle this border dispute? And lastly, to quote what Army Chief General Dwivedi said yesterday, how do you build trust along the LAC when you're dealing with the Chinese? Joining me to discuss this today are Lieutenant General P. Ravishankar, former DG Artillery. In the studio, I have with me my colleague, TV9's foreign editor, R. Sridharan. We have Ambassador Prabhu Dayal joining us and Professor Sanjay Pandey as well. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. General Shankar, I want to recall a conversation I had with you in June 2020 when you said that the PLA had not come prepared for war at that time. You know, you had studied the way they had mobilized and they had deployed. The simple fact that I still remember you told me that their gun emplacements were not dug in. They hadn't built the kind of bunkers that would indicate a kind of preparedness for a conflict or a war. It was just calculated for muscle flexing. At that time, I didn't believe all of what you said then, but this seems to be the case. 4 years later, you have indicated the fact that this was actually meant to be aggressive bullying of the kind that they do with all their neighbors from time to time. But you know, given the fact that over the last 4 years, both sides have built up so much military infrastructure. There's something like 100,000 soldiers that both India and China have deployed there. What are the things that you feel should now be done to ensure that these deployments don't lead to some kind of a border clash like we saw in Galwan in 2020?
I think the first thing is that you need to build proper protocols at this of disengagement. As disengagement progresses, these protocols must start being put in place.
Right.
Because in the near term, I visualize disengagement to some extent will take place in these disputed areas, and a certain amount of de-escalation will take place. And I don't visualize de-induction taking place in a hurry. That's the first thing. So you have to manage this entire border problem between the process of disengagement and de-escalation, so that things don't get repeated. Now, in the balanced portion of the LAC, things are in place already. It's in these disputed friction points that things will arise. Right. So the first thing is there has to be a protocol for troops to step back.
Yes.
And troop to step back till their opponent's perceived line of the LAC. For example, if you have your perceived your LAC up to PP 15, 10, 12, whatever it
Yes.
is, Chinese have to get back beyond that.
Right.
And similarly, the Chinese have to indicate a line which they perceive as their LAC. And that has to be, of course, confirmed by some historical evidence that they've come to a particular point. We have to step back beyond that or behind that. The next thing is, over a period of time in these areas which are overlapping each other,
Yeah.
overlapping each other's perception, a lot of infrastructure has come up.
Right.
What do you do with that? Because and there has to be first protocol that that infrastructure has to be destroyed or frozen.
Right.
And
Right.
something like that happened when they vacated the north bank of the Pangong Tso and all that.
Yes.
They broke their own bunkers and went back.
Yes.
So a similar exercise or a thing has to happen in this case also.
Right.
They, any permanent structures or even temporary structures, they must undo them. Right. And then there have to be protocols that nothing can be built in this area without each other's consent.
Right. Which is the way things were prior to this standoff in May 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. Because forward troops have a habit of improving their position.
Yes.
And if that improvement as part of that improvement of a position, the other side perceives it as an aggressive move, then tempers will start rising once again.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Then, I think from what I've heard, they're going to have periodic patrolling and all that
Yes.
going.
Yes.
Right. Well, that is fine. But the thing is not, the problem is not immediate. The problem is down the line. I mean,
Right.
we must understand that these protocols existed before also.
Yes.
Despite these protocols, the situation has come to this pass, where and over a period of time, these protocols get diluted,
Right.
and they get diluted because of local conditions.
Right.
Because protocols are made at some level, ratified at some other level.
Yes.
But what happens on ground is something completely different.
The actual ground position, as you say, is something that's completely different to what's written in agreements. But, I want to bring in Ambassador Prabhu Dayal on this, General Shankar. We were chatting before you joined, just before the show, and he said that, this is one aspect of foreign policy that we are almost entirely guided by the military. And that's been the case for the last 70 odd years. But Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, how do you deal with China? Given the fact that what they did in 2020 basically undid something like 3.5 decades of hard work put in by diplomats on both sides. You had Rajiv Gandhi making that historic visit to China, Beijing in 1988, with Deng Xiaoping. And then you had a series of meetings after that, culminating in this agreement somewhere in the mid-90s for the restoration of peace and maintenance of peace and tranquility on the LAC. Given the fact that what the Chinese did, in 2020, they just ripped through all of those agreements and they tried to establish a new normal here. As a diplomat, what do you think should be our lookout in this? It's well and good for Prime Minister Modi to meet Xi Jinping. But as General Ravi Shankar said, when things unfold on the ground, the actual position on the ground is something totally different. How do you make these jam-proof? How do you make them tamper-proof? A new set of protocols, perhaps?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I would be totally guided by the army, and so I will completely go along with what General Shankar has said. He rightly pointed out that these protocols have been there.
Right.
But the Chinese escalated the situation despite these protocols.
Right.
They violate protocols whenever they wish to.
Right.
Now, the diplomatic community is attaching some importance to the timing of the recent announcements relating to the disengagement. As you pointed out yourself, there are 3 steps, of course: disengagement, de-escalation, and demilitarization.
Yes.
And what is happening at this stage is perhaps only disengagement. That's a welcome step. But as I said, something has to be read into the timing.
Yes.
And a lot of people feel that this is just to clear the atmospherics
Right.
for the India-China summit meeting.
Right.
Now, Russia has perhaps played a role in this regard because Russia wants the summit to look as good as possible,
Yes.
and the high-level Chinese India meeting,
Yes.
summit meeting with India, certainly gives the impression that everything is hunky-dory, there
Right.
are no internal frictions within BRICS, and that we are pretty united in our thinking.
Yes.
And for this reason, the summit meeting between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi serves the sort of purpose which President Putin certainly has in mind.
Right.
So the Chinese have said that they will be disengaging. There is this nice summit meeting that will be taking place. But as General said,
Yes.
it will have to be seen what happens on the ground.
What happens
And
on the
that
ground? Yes.
only the armed forces will know because they will be monitoring what really takes place. Now, the Chinese have already built up a lot of, entrenchments around the border.
Right,
They have
right.
strengthened their positions in a big way.
Yes.
Now, will they break all this down? No. So there won't be any de-escalation in that
Right,
sense
right.
because those positions will be right there at the line of actual control. And the Chinese will continue to sort of put across their point of view of
Right.
what they see as,
So this,
as the border, etc.
Yes, Ambassador, so the point that the MEA was making all along, which was that the restoration of status quo ante on the LAC, which is one of the prerequisites, that seems to be unlikely to ever happen, given the amount of infrastructure build-up that's happened along the LAC. It doesn't seem likely that the Chinese could roll all of that back and take their forces away, the demilitarization that we are talking about. But, that said, what would you really want to see from the Chinese side? Apart from what's going on the ground, what kind of concrete steps would you like to see from Beijing to say that, listen, they may have violated the LAC in 2020, but they're trying to make amends? What is the kind of behavior that you would see, apart from what you would see on the ground? Some signaling, you think, from the very top, from Xi Jinping perhaps?
No, the signals from the top would be very nice, that we want good relations and that China wants to smoothen ties, etc.
Yes.
But the generals who will know what the Chinese will do on the ground.
Right.
So the ground situation supersedes, in my
Right.
view, any statements of bonhomie and good intention that are made.
Right.
What really transpires on the ground is of
Yes,
the greatest
I'm going to come
importance.
to that, the ground situation again. I'm going to ask General Ravi Shankar that, but my colleague Sri is here with me in the studio, and I want to ask Sri that, we spoke about this yesterday as well. When it comes to China, Sri, there's always these two words that every country in the world seems to use: trust deficit.
Correct.
How do you re-establish trust deficit with China, especially Xi Jinping playing the big game, trying to be the regional superpower?
I think that's an extremely hard proposition, Sandeep, because as we've seen, China is adept at saying something
Yes.
and doing something entirely different.
Right.
So even in this case,
Yes.
while in principle we have a certain understanding between the two countries
Right.
in terms of how they're going to behave along the LAC.
Yes.
Now, will that actually translate into some sort of change at the ground level? That is a big question, and I'm not 100% sure that it will happen. Now, there are two scenarios under which we can have peace along the LAC.
Right.
One, either China stops its incremental acquisition
Right.
of Indian territory, or we just
Right.
stand by and let them come.
Right.
Now, I don't think India is ever going to do that, to allow
Right.
China to come and keep taking our territory away, and it's not fair even. So I
Yes.
think what is reasonable to expect
Right.
is for China to honor the agreements
Yes.
that are already in place, to
Right.
recognize the boundaries which are already in place.
right.
I think that's the least China can do
Yes.
to show that it is serious about some sort of peace, some sort of putting an end to these skirmishes
Right.
along the LAC.
Right.
Will that happen? So far, nothing in China's behavior has given
Yes.
the confidence or the comfort that it will happen. So, will anything change overnight or dramatically? Has anything happened
Right.
which will lead to a significant change in Chinese behavior? I don't see any proof on the ground yet.
Right. You don't see any proof on the ground. And in fact, with the Chinese, that's always the case, that they say one thing and they do another. And we've learned that to our peril in the past as well. But, Professor Sanjay Pandey is there. He's joining us. He's an expert on Russia. Now, I want to ask you this, Professor Pandey, we've seen those wonderful visuals of Prime Minister Modi with President Putin, he has an excellent relationship, possibly the warmest relationship with any global leader today. And you have President Xi Jinping, and Xi and President Putin have a good rapport. You think, given President Putin's position in BRICS and the fact that he's literally a bridge between India and China, you think we could expect him to play some kind of a role in controlling China's behavior when it comes to the LAC?
Well, we have seen this earlier also. You remember the standoff in 2017?
Yes.
And it was between June and August. And there was a BRICS meeting at that time also.
Yes. This was the Doklam standoff. Yes.
Yes, Doklam. So, Doklam also, it is believed that Russia played a role.
Right.
It nudged China to come to some mutually acceptable solution with India.
Right.
Because otherwise, it would have shown the entire BRICS organization in poor light.
Right.
Chinese are very conscious about their international image.
Yes.
And now that they are acknowledged as one of the two superpowers,
Yes.
they would like to be seen in more positive light.
Right.
They would like to be seen as responsible global players.
Right.
They would like to be seen as a country which engages with neighbors.
Right.
And then there is Russia, which is now the foremost ally of China. And
Yes.
they cannot hope to afford to annoy Russia.
Annoy Russia,
And Russia,
absolutely.
which has
Yes.
had a long-standing ties with India, would like to see peace between the two, would like to see peace on the borders, India-China border.
Right.
So I'm confident that Russians have played a role in this,
Absolutely.
as they have done before. And I believe that that has played a role.
Yes, Russian safety valve, Sri.
So, just to add to what he's saying, see,
Yes.
I think an independent third-party leader is useful when you
Yes.
want to pull a country back from brink.
Right.
Right. But here we're talking about China, de-escalating on its own.
Yes.
And accepting what has already been agreed between the two countries.
Right.
And so why should things lead to a situation where someone like a Putin needs to come in?
Yeah.
He will come in only if things really go out of hand,
Right,
like he did in the case of Doklam, as our panelist said. But I think I would be mistaken if Putin actually managed to convince China to not to saber rattle along all the borders,
Yes.
along all the waters that it operates
Right.
in.
Yeah.
I think that's too much to ask of any statesman of any country, any leader of any country.
Right, absolutely. But it always helps to have a friend like Russia on your side.
Absolutely,
especially
it
someone
does.
who's got a hotline.
But with limited impact.
with limited impact. But talking of impact, General Ravi Shankar, we were talking earlier about what the militaries really need to do, because we're back to the actual position on the ground. At the end of the day, we are here sitting in studios and in our living rooms talking about a situation that very few of us really have seen face to face. Of course, you've served there. You've served several years along the LAC. But tell us, this trust deficit that we are talking about a little while earlier, how it's going to play out on the ground. One of the very alarming developments in the last couple of years was when the army is believed to have allowed the use of weapons along the LAC, given how perilous the situation had become 4.5 years back. Put down for us what are the kind of CBMs, confidence building measures, you would like to see along the LAC about the use of firearms or the use of these melee weapons like spiked clubs and electroshock weapons and all of those things. How can the two militaries really go back to what the situation was like pre-April 2020? General Ravi Shankar.
Look, thanks a lot. Before I get on to the confidence building measures and the protocols to be put in place for this not to happen,
Right.
I want to bring out something, which is very important in this whole story.
Yes.
Probably this is the first time in recent history where China has taken a back step.
Right.
We must recognize the moment. Why? If you remember, when, 3 years back, when the first disengagement took place on the North Bank and
Yeah.
Chushul and in Gogra and Hot Springs, I said, look, this is the first time the Chinese are breaking their own defenses and going back.
Right.
And they're back 9 kilometers. It's
Yes.
unheard of.
Right.
And this is the second instance, right? And there are many more factors besides what has transpired between President Putin, Xi Jinping, and Prime Minister Modi for this to happen, right? So I think we need to recognize this moment.
Right.
And this would give a lot of confidence to our troops on ground, right? And it is a matter of confidence on our part, which will ensure that we can put protocols in place so that the things don't get flared up more.
Right, absolutely. Protocols in place to ensure that those, confrontations don't spiral out of control. Unfortunately, General Shankar, we are completely out of time, but we'll keep coming back to you on this point because this is the subject that's going to be debated after that very historic summit meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. And what we are talking about here today with my esteemed panelists was the fact that how India and China really need to put in the CBMs into place to ensure that the border standoffs don't spiral out of control and become full-scale border wars. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, gentlemen, and on the eve of this very historic meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. Delhi is breathing poison. That's right. Every year, as soon as the rains stop, a thin layer of grey descends on the Delhi skies. Visibility becomes low and people face all sorts of breathing ailments like shortness of breath, coughing, wheezing, asthma flare-ups and chest pain. This is putting citizens at risk. They can be afflicted by lung cancer, heart attacks, strokes and even death. And all this is because the air quality deteriorates. Now a normal good AQI is between 0 and 50. In fact, that's what it is in Mumbai today. But the AQI in Delhi today is 344. It's in the severe category. And this ongoing severe air pollution event has been a recurring phenomenon since 2011. And the prime culprit for that is stubble burning in the neighboring states of Haryana and Punjab. Now this happens after the post-harvest season of October and November. But 14 years and counting, the air quality continues to worsen. The fires haven't stopped and the same blame game, the political blame game continues year after year after year. Now how does one ensure that the people of Delhi NCR get their basic right to breathe in clean air? Joining me to discuss this are Dr. S.K. Tyagi, former Additional Director and Senior Scientist at the CPCB, Dr. Arind Kumar, Chairman of the Institute of Chest Surgery at Medanta Hospital, and of course I have with me my colleague Nivriti Mohan in the studio. Nivriti has covered the air pollution of Delhi, she's travelled to the stubble burning in Punjab, and of course she's covered the poisoning of the Yamuna River. So she's our all-round environment specialist, our ground reporter, and the person that we go to every time there's a cloud of smog over Delhi and there's white froth in the Yamuna. Nivriti, tell us about your trip to Punjab recently. What did you really see there on the ground and how concerned were you given the fact that you live in the middle of all of this?
Right. So first of all, what did the Supreme Court say? Supreme Court said that why are you not putting penalty on the farmers who are burning stubble? But when you go to the ground to
Yes.
Haryana or you talk to farmers, you come to know that the penalty, imposition of penalty, talking about it is very convenient. But when you go on the ground, you talk to the farmers and you come to know that they don't have those facilities through which they are compelled not to burn the parali.
You were mentioning that how there is this crop machine which is supposed to be there. You're supposed to have hundreds of them, but that one block which is responsible for 300 villages had just one machine.
Yeah, so they call it a baler machine,
Yes.
through which you collect parali and you make some blocks and then you take to some site where it is alternatively treated. So what happens is that when I spoke to the farmers, he told me that first of all they don't get a machine.
Yes.
and if they get it, if they get some time, then
Right.
it is not in near future. Like if they want it in coming 10
There's a
days.
waiting list for
yeah,
that, and
there's a
they're in a
long
hurry to.
waiting list.
They have to
and they have
burn
to give
their
money to
Yes.
the person who is having a machine.
Right.
Otherwise, what the government should have done is to incentivize farmers
Yes.
and take parali from them.
Right,
take
we'll
that
come to
stubble
that
from
in a
them.
minute, Nivriti, but I first want to talk to Dr. Arind Kumar, from the Medanta Hospital. Dr. Kumar, welcome to the News9 Plus show. You know, I opened my window in South Delhi today and I looked at, the smog outside, and it just so happened that a week earlier I had filmed the same, scene from my window, and the difference, as you can see, is stark. It was clear skies last Wednesday, where the AQI was 150 or so, and today it's a 350, 360. You can't see anything. It's just like a pea soup fog, a deadly toxic fog. Tell us how this threatens the lives of people living in Delhi NCR.
Thank you very much for having me on this show. As you said in the introductory remarks, that this is something that we have been facing since 2011. Every year, year after year, we discuss it. In fact, October, November, December, January, these are the pollution months. Come October, everybody starts talking about
Yes.
it. We continue to talk about it through November, December. Around mid-January, it starts becoming less, and then everybody forgets about it, only to remember it again next year. Same questions are there, same answers are there, and it's so sad that 10 years down the line, we are asking the same questions, giving the same answers, the same solutions, which have not been implemented on the ground, which was so elegantly put by Nivriti, that we know the cause, we
Yes.
do have the solutions. What is missing is the desire to
Right.
implement those solutions ruthlessly.
Right.
See, I don't know why always we have to take this danda approach
Yes.
of penalizing people.
Right.
I mean, penalizing, you can't have a constable or a policeman
Yes.
standing in every street or outside every farm to
Yeah.
penalize those people. This concept cannot work. You need to go into the details as to why they are burning. After all,
Right.
when they burn, they also know that the same toxic air is first affecting them
Yes.
and then coming to Delhi. So if they still do it, there must be some pressing reason. And if you address that reason, if you incentivize them
Yes.
not to do it, rather than penalize them for doing it, I'm sure it will work.
Right. Dr. Kumar, are you seeing an increase in the number of cases for, patients? Is it the same every year, or has there been any change this year? Are there more number of people who are affected?
No, the patients have just started coming. So this
Yes.
started about a week back.
Yeah.
So there is an increase. Even I, by the time it's evening, I start having a little kind of a soreness in the throat.
Right. Right.
You'll start doing
Yes.
like this. There is a little bit of choking sensation, and there
Right.
are people coming. You talk to child specialists, and they'll tell you that suddenly there is an
Yes.
increase in the number of children, and everybody is now getting nebulizers. So
Yes.
many friends, people, relatives, and known to acquaintances I know, they have started keeping those inhalers in their
Yes.
purses. So there is so much of self-medication going on,
Right.
because every time they go to a doctor, they see them prescribe the same thing. So they say, what is the need to go again? I know they
Right.
will give only this. So
Yes.
people are buying, and these are available off the shelf on the stores.
Right.
So huge amount of self-medication going on.
Yes.
And these are all chemicals, so they may harm also.
Yes.
But then this is what is happening. So there is a visible impact. There is an increase in the number of patients. And the most
Yes.
dangerous part, which you mentioned in the beginning, that this in the long term is leading to cancer lung.
Yes.
Cancer lung, which was earlier known to occur only or mostly in smokers.
Right.
Now 50% of my patients are non-smokers, which
Right.
is a huge and a frightening number.
Yes.
That smoker, non-smoker difference is now gone, because of pollution. everybody has become a smoker.
I mean, that's one of the most shocking things I've heard.
It's one of
Doctor.
the most dangerous
Yes,
also,
it's
because
everyone in
this is now occurring.
Yes.
This is now occurring in younger people also.
Yes.
And normally you suspect this in 50 plus people, but when a
Right.
late 30th person starts having it, you don't suspect it. So therefore, most of these patients are getting diagnosed late.
Right.
So in next 10 years, I think it's going to take a heavy toll on our population.
It's going to take a heavy toll indeed, and this is a story that Nivritti has covered in the past as well. The fact that all of us here in Delhi are smoking the equivalent of 2 packets of cigarettes every single day. We've all turned chain smokers. So, Dr. Tyagi, the Supreme Court has just pulled up the government for this absolute, abdication of responsibility. As the doctor was just telling us that, it happens to us year after year, every year for the last decade. It reminds me of this Hollywood film called Groundhog Day, where the lead actor is, destined to repeat the same day over and over again. And here it's the people of Delhi NCR who are, subject to this for the last decade. Every October to January, the same arguments, the same comments, the same, everything is known about this, but nobody does anything about it. What explains this absolute lethargy among the officialdom, among the bureaucracy and the government?
Thank you very much, and namaskar for inviting me to participate in this talk. And Dr. Saab has very nicely explained the impact of the air pollution, particularly in the month of October, November, and December. And you rightly said that Supreme Court on September 24, I think, had very harsh comments about the Air Quality Commission and governments. They are not taking prompt action as required to control the air pollution in the Delhi NCR region,
right,
including the stubble burning,
right,
in the Punjab and
Dr. Kumar, is stubble burning the #1 cause of air pollution in Delhi this month, or are there other causes as well?
Yeah. Let me. You had asked very pertinent question. If I give you today's at present, what is the air quality index as of now at 11 a.m. today? Delhi, it was 367.
Yes.
AQI. And if you see nearby NCR region, Gurgaon, Faridabad, it was about 248, and Ghaziabad, Noida, it was 305. But now you go back to the Haryana and Punjab side. So Sonipat, it was less than 300, 275.
Yes.
Then Karnal 281.
Yeah.
Kurukshetra 223. Ambala 110. And Chandigarh 220.
Right.
So if you see the AQI in Haryana and Punjab is comparatively low.
Yes.
As compared to Delhi. So which indicate certainly some local sources of the air pollution. There may be some contribution, I am not denying that, but that is not too much, in my opinion, from Parali in Delhi, because when you burn Parali, so very fine particles go up high in the atmosphere, and they can travel, of course. But if you see the local sources, particularly the waste burning and the dust from the construction and resuspension of the dust on the roads, beside the pollution because of the vehicles.
Right.
Because vehicles are in very huge number.
Yes.
So these are equally responsible, or I will say they are more responsible than Parali in Delhi. And
automobile pollution as well. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tyagi.
Yes, so,
I'm just going to ask Dr. Arind Kumar this. Dr. Kumar, what would you recommend that our viewers do? Given the fact that we are looking at possibly 3 or 4 months of air pollution of the kind that we see year after year, what must viewers do to protect themselves and their families from this kind of air pollution? What are the 5 steps that you would advise your patients?
Well, the same question again has been coming every year, year after year. And very sad that, I'm not commenting on you, but I'm just saying the question asked is, how do you protect yourself from pollution?
Yes.
And actually what the question should be
Yes.
is, how do you prevent this pollution from happening?
Right.
When air quality is 349,
Yes.
now breathing is one thing which is continuous. Unlike food poisoning or water poisoning,
Yes.
where if you know that your food is poisoned or you know that your water is poisoned, you can stay without food for 5, 7, 10,
Yes.
15 days. You can stay without
Absolutely.
water for 5, 6 days. If you know that your air is poisoned, you cannot stop breathing for more than minute and a half, or
Yes.
maybe if you are a very robust person, 2 minutes, not more than that. So therefore, if the air quality is like this and you have to breathe 25,000 times a day,
Right.
how are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to prevent the injury? Well, people talk of using air purifiers. Air purifier will only work when you are in a closed room.
Right.
You have to close windows, you have to close the doors, and the air handling capacity of that machine has to be equal to the size of the room. It can only help you
Yes.
if you are inside a room. The moment you open the doors and windows or you come out, it stops helping you.
Right.
People talk about mask. Simple cloth mask or surgical mask does not help.
Yes.
N95 mask help only if worn properly, covering the
Right.
nose and the mouth, so that all the air goes through the mask. But can you wear mask 24/7?
Right.
As the moment you remove the mask, again you are breathing the same air. So wearing mask, using air purifier, keeping yourself hydrated,
Yes.
avoiding highly polluted areas, staying away from them, staying close to greenery, and taking your medicines regularly in case you are on medicine. These are some of the steps, but I would like to say these are very, very minor steps which
Yes.
will not be able to protect you in a great way from the air pollution. I
Right.
think the question that we need to ask is 10 years and still counting.
Yes.
Why are we letting this problem kill us and
Yes.
our next generation?
Absolutely. Dr. Kumar, I couldn't have put that more beautifully like you did, that 10 years and counting, 25 breaths every day, and that's what we need to take to stay alive and survive. And with the kind of toxic air around us and the kind of noxious fumes that are being thrown around the city, which has a lot to do with the kind of crop stubble burning in Punjab as well. We have no option, literally. We are caught between the devil and the deep sea. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us and talking about this burning issue, if I can call it that. Burning issue, Nivriti. Toxic capital, New Delhi, facing the same situation year after year after year. Thank you very much.